It started with a little boy running across the grounds of Balmoral in tears. And it ended with Prince William making a move so cold, so calculated, and so deliberately final that even senior courtiers, who have spent decades inside the British monarchy, were left speechless. No press conference. No public statement. No dramatic confrontation caught on camera. Just a closed-door meeting, a briefing folder, and a decision that told everyone inside Buckingham Palace something they had quietly suspected for a long time. The next king has already started acting like one. And the moment that triggered all of it? A child's cruelty directed at Prince Louis. Words so cutting, so deliberately aimed at his family, that they reference Catherine and Princess Diana. Let that land for a second. Diana? The woman William watched be torn apart by this very institution. The mother he lost at 13 years old, while the entire world watched him grieve. The name that carries more emotional weight inside the Wales household than perhaps any word in the English language. That name was used as a weapon against his youngest son. And William's response was not anger. It was not a heated confrontation or a dramatic scene on the Balmoral grounds. It was something far more dangerous than either of those things. It was stillness, followed by complete and total action. Subscribe to Crown Rift Daily right now, because this story goes much deeper than a family argument, and you need to hear every part of it. Balmoral is supposed to be the one place the royal family exhales. The cameras stay outside. The formality drops away. The schedules loosen. For one brief window every year, they are allowed to simply exist as a family rather than as an institution performing itself for the world. That is what makes what happened there so significant. The day had started normally. The family was gathered, the children were around, and on the surface everything appeared calm. Then young Prince Louis wandered slightly away from the adults, the way children always do, and in that unguarded moment, one of Camilla's grandchildren approached him. What followed was not playground roughhousing. It was not a misunderstanding between children who did not know better. According to those close enough to witness it, the comments directed at Louis were genuinely cruel, targeting not just the boy himself, but his family. And some of those comments, sources say, touched directly on Catherine and invoked the name of Princess Diana. Louis burst into tears and ran straight back to his mother. What people noticed in that moment was not simply how distressed the young prince was. It was Catherine's reaction. She did not cry. She did not raise her voice. She did not cause a scene in front of staff or family members watching nearby. She went completely still. And anyone who has ever witnessed someone hold themselves together in a moment of genuine, profound anger knows that kind of stillness is not calm. It is control. It is someone making a very deliberate choice about what happens next rather than allowing emotion to make that choice for them. Staff members standing nearby described the atmosphere around her shifting immediately. Something in her expression made people uncomfortable, not because she was volatile, but because she clearly had absolutely no intention of letting this pass. She did not. When the day wound down, and it was just William and Catherine behind closed doors, she told him exactly what she felt. And the way she framed it was not simply the expression of a hurt mother, though she was that. It was something with far more strategic precision than raw emotion. She brought up Diana. She reminded William of how this institution had failed to protect his mother from the emotional damage that surrounded her, the internal dysfunction, the relentless pressure, the complete failure of the people around her to draw a firm line when one was needed. And her message was direct and impossible to misread. She was not going to watch history repeat itself with their children. For William, that did not need explaining. He did not need to be persuaded that emotional harm inside the royal family is real. He grew up inside it. He stood beside his brother at his mother's funeral at 15 years old in front of a billion watching eyes, and somehow held himself together. He has spent the entirety of his adult life trying to build something genuinely different for George, Charlotte, and Louis, a home where emotional honesty is not treated as weakness, where feelings are acknowledged rather than suppressed, where his children are protected from the kind of slow institutional damage that defined so much of his own childhood. When Catherine placed the image of Louis running across that lawn in tears directly beside the memory of everything Diana went through, and everything the monarchy failed to do, it reframed the entire situation in an instant. This was no longer a family incident that could be quietly managed and politely forgotten. This was a choice. Repeat history or refuse to. William chose. The following morning, Kensington Palace was operating in a mode that staff immediately recognized as unusual. Senior aides were called into a closed-door meeting without advance notice. Internal communications were being monitored with uncommon tightness. Legal advisors arrived quietly. Nothing appeared on the public schedule. Nothing was announced. But inside those walls, everyone understood something significant was being decided. William walked into that meeting carrying a briefing folder. And what it contained, according to sources familiar with the situation, was a detailed and methodical breakdown of exactly how Camilla's wider family's presence within royal life was going to change. Not reduced slightly, not adjusted at the margins, but scaled back with a thoroughness that made the intention unmistakable. Event invitations, balcony appearances, ceremonial roles, honorary participation, future visibility in any official capacity tied to the monarchy. All of it reviewed, all of it addressed with a single clear directive. Palace staff quietly began referring to it among themselves as the eraser mandate. What unsettled people most was not the scale of the decision. It was how William carried himself throughout. No visible frustration. No outbursts. No emotional temperature in the room that suggested this was a reaction made in the heat of the moment. He was calm, precise, and focused in a way that communicated something far more permanent than anger. This was intention. And then came the move that genuinely stunned the institution's most experienced insiders. William did not consult King Charles before putting the directive into motion. He did not follow the established chain of protocol that has governed internal royal decision-making for generations. He acted first, and then informed his father afterward in writing. The letter, by all accounts, was respectful in tone. Nobody describes it as aggressive or hostile toward the king. But the content left absolutely no ambiguity about what had happened. There was no request for feedback. No opening for reconsideration. Charles was not being asked whether this should be done. He was being told it already had been. For courtiers who have built entire careers operating within the careful hierarchy of the palace, that sequence of events was genuinely startling. Because there is a profound difference between an heir preparing to lead and an heir who has already started leading. And in the eyes of nearly everyone inside those walls, this moment felt like the second one. Camilla pushed back. She went to Charles, argued that a decision of this magnitude required the king's full involvement before it was carried out, and pressed him to reverse what William had done. And from a purely institutional standpoint, her argument had logic. The monarchy functions on consensus and hierarchy. When someone begins moving outside of that, even for understandable reasons, it creates real questions about where authority actually sits. But Charles did not reverse it. He stepped aside. And that quiet choice, a king declining to overrule his son, sent a message through the palace that no announcement ever could. Staff and courtiers, who are extraordinarily skilled at sensing where influence is concentrating, began recalibrating. The Wales household, already carrying strong public approval and genuine emotional connection with the British people, suddenly felt like the gravitational center of the institution in a way that was more visible than it had ever been before. When this story began filtering beyond palace walls, the public reaction caught many observers off guard. People did not respond to it like royal gossip. They responded to it emotionally, and the reason was the name that kept surfacing in every conversation. Diana. Social media filled almost immediately with old footage and photographs of her. Candid moments, interviews, images of a young William and Harry at her side. People were not sharing these randomly. They were sharing them because the connection was impossible to miss. Here was a family that had once failed to protect one of its most beloved members from precisely this kind of emotional harm. And now her son, the boy who had stood at her funeral and somehow not broken, was making absolutely certain that did not happen again with his own children. The directive never softened. No quiet reversal happened overnight. No compromise walked any part of it back. Every decision made in that closed-door meeting remained exactly in place. And that consistency, more than anything else, told the real story. This was not a reaction. This was not a moment of temporary anger that cooled by morning. This was William. And this is exactly who he intends to be when he is king. Subscribe to Crown Rift Daily and turn on notifications, because the monarchy's next chapter is already being written behind closed doors, and we will be here for every word of it.